Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you guys join us for this webinar that we put together specifically for our packaging industry leaders who are responsible for growth. So if you're either the CEO or a senior leader in the marketing department or in the sales team, and you are the one that's supposed to be bringing in new business, then this webinar is for you. We hope by the end of this webinar, you would have very actionable recommendations and ideas that you can immediately copy and implement in your organizations, some of which you might already be doing that you can improve upon. Some of them might be some new things that you may need to consider implementing within your organization. So we're excited that you are here. You would have the option of asking some questions at the end of this webinar. We also have some special resources that we made available. So stay tuned until the end of this webinar. And then also, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to just chat along the way. We'll make sure to address them either in the presentation itself or at the end of the webinar. So without any further ado, we'll get started. So you might be wondering, what gives us the credibility to actually talk to you about packaging? Trust us, we are growth doctors. We worked with a lot of packaging companies, label, printing, plastic packaging, folding cartons, so many different packaging industries that we've served over the last 16 years. We've seen, even during the economic downturn, some of our packaging companies extremely versed in their sales and marketing efforts were thriving during that time when many of their competitors were having to close doors. They were able to either acquire their assets and grow even beyond where they were financially and company-wise, and then continue to thrive even today. So we have some extensive experience in this space. And I'm Samuel Timothy, one of the growth strategists here at OneIMS, and I'll have Taylor introduce himself as well.
Absolutely. My name is Taylor Rowe. I'm also a member of our senior leadership team and a growth strategist as well. And as Sam mentioned, both of us, work very closely with a lot of our packaging companies, everything from primary packaging, secondary packaging, high-end custom hand-sewn products. We even work with clients that manufacture packaging machinery and packaging equipment. We wanted to have this webinar to speak directly to you as leaders in the packaging space, packaging and print space, to talk about exactly what we're doing for our clients, as Samuel mentioned, to help them grow in spite of everything that's going on in the outside world. So we're very excited to share our growth, secrets, if you will, and put them on display and explain exactly what we're doing for our clients to help them acquire customers and grow in 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, and if you've been in the packaging space, you might recognize some of our packaging clients. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of our customers, but clearly we have a lot of experience in the packaging space. And I even forgot to mention what Taylor mentioned, which is the equipment side of the packaging industry as well. I don't think we have a logo here of any equipment companies, but we also have a tremendous amount of experience in the equipment side of the business, companies that are actually specifically selling into packaging companies as well. So as far as the lessons that we've learned and the experience that we have is what we're going to be sharing with you. And then we're assuming that you are someone who's interested in learning new ways to market and promote your business and acquire new customers. So if you are in such a mindset, then I believe this webinar is going to be extremely productive. And again, what we want is that open mindedness, right? And willing to just listen to some of these lessons that we've learned and ideas that we have. And then we can certainly assure you that if you implement some of these things, you will certainly see the growth. So, the opening thing that we need to, the big challenge that we need to address, right? What are the current challenges that are facing companies in the packaging space? And I'm sure if you are a manufacturing company CEO or a senior leader who's responsible for growth in the packaging sector, some of these things are probably you're familiar with. I have this joke that I often say, if every time I've heard in a conversation where someone said, hey, we've been in business for the last 40 to 60 years. Our customers are not necessarily online. They're not, making purchases the way that you think most people are doing. And this particular person who might be telling me all this may have just made a purchase online, went to Tesla website, configured a Tesla Model S Plaid with $130,000 probably purchase price, put a deposit on his credit card for $10,000 and made a purchase, but would say, hey, my customers, yeah, we're a relationship-based business. Our customers are We have a Rolodex full of contacts of customers that we worked with the last 20 years. That's the relationship. But the fact of the matter is, what we're seeing is that Rolodex relationship is actually dwindling down. As you can imagine, this Rolodex is shrinking, right? The people that were on the other side of that Rolodex, those procurement managers, the design engineers, the product manager, or even the owners of those companies that were making purchases from our packaging clients, those guys are either retiring or left the industry as a whole, or some of them may have passed away as well. So that reality is actually becoming even more real today than ever before. And we have an exodus of labor force that are leaving the labor force, right? The people are leaving the labor force. So people on the other side of that Rolodex is no longer at that organization, which presents a challenge because that relationship built business building model is getting really difficult, and it's being replaced by a new generation of employees, right? These are recent grads that are coming into the market. They're technology digital natives whose primary goal isn't to build relationship. They're trying to solve business challenges, and they don't have any interest in rekindling the relationship that they may have with a previous vendor. So this is a reality, and it's a challenge many of our packaging customers faced, and we're constantly have this conversation on a day-to-day basis. The other side of the equation is the traditional way of selling. Like, I think most of us are immune to any sort of interruption-based selling strategy. I hate, cold calls. I hate receiving them. I'm also a guy that's opt for email over phone conversations. And I know you can probably say the same. Most people you talk to in the younger generation, they probably rather text to you than talk to you over a phone call, right? And conversations are very brief. You can't build a very long-term relationship with such short-term those sort of conversations, right? And people don't want to be sold to. People want a sales experience that's more helpful, and people want information that are provided to them in a way that they can consume and make decisions in a timely manner on their own terms. There's been a lot of studies and stats around how purchase journey has completely evolved. In the past, the conversations primarily, if you needed to get any sort of information around the product or service, that information was usually in the hands of the sales rep. Now, the people who are looking for any sort of insights, they can find all of that information on the web, whether what kind of packaging options are available, what best practices on packaging, samples, templates, all of the things that they're looking for, even reviews about your companies or even your employees' experience by going to Glassdoors and whatnot. All of that information is publicly available, and salespeople no longer hold all the cards and don't hold all the insights, which also presents a lot of challenge from a sales and marketing standpoint. You can't sell to these new buyers in the old way that you've done in the past. One of the stats that I would probably just mention is about 67 to about 75% of the buyer's journey is almost completed before the buyer ever reaches out to a sales rep. So if the salespeople are expecting to make a case for why they should consider buying from them, that's going to be extremely difficult because the buyer has already made all the researches and have made a lot of decisions along the way before they were actually even starting that conversation with a sales rep. So as a business leader who's responsible for growth, you need to think about that buyer's journey and how that's evolving. And obviously, we're not opposed to traditional mediums of reaching our customers, such as trade shows or any sort of other traditional mediums. But the fact of the matter is, trade shows are not as well attended as in the past. And as if anything that we've been taught during this pandemic season is people are, opting for other means of reaching customers and not necessarily always out in the field looking for attending a trade shows. But we also know that people who usually come to the trade shows are not ready to make a purchase. They're not in market buyers. They usually are just browsing for ideas and collecting freebies and not necessarily ready to just make a purchase commitment. And then if you also look at it from a cost perspective, it is an expensive venture. Most people only take into account the actual cost of exhibit, but there's an opportunity cost. If you have 2 to 4 people who are going to be manning a trade show booth, their travel, their stay at the hotels, the food, the time away from the office, and then productive time they could have invested into probably conversations with their buyer-ready leads. Instead of doing all of that, they might be out in the field at a trade show, manning that booth and giving away freebies. That's a pretty expensive venture. If you take into account an average trade show with all those costs associated, it's probably around $40,000 on the low end. So if you take 40,000 and if you walk away with a 100 business card at the end of that trade show, that means you just spent $400 for each of those business cards. That's about $400 cost per lead. And if you're honest with yourself, you can probably say that those 100 leads aren't all qualified. And if just for conversation's sake, let's just say if you had one purchase that come out of it, and that means your cost of acquisition of that one customer was $40,000. So unless your first order was in more than $40,000, you're probably not even going to pay off that investment, maybe for multiple orders from that very customer. So it would take a lot more orders from that same customer, or you have to justify by having more than one customer coming from that investment to really justify. Right? So if you think about from the cost of acquisition, is a very costly, and obviously you can't do this on a every week basis as well. So you have to have other means of reaching your customers. And the other fact of the matter is you're seeing a big transition in terms of how the succession planning, right? There's a lot of companies that are going through this big transition where companies are being transferred over to their younger generation. And this also means a lot from a packaging company standpoint. This means your old relationship, what we mentioned, like those things are changing. This new generation that coming on to take ownership, they're trying to find ways to be more efficient, more creative. They are going to be making changes, which means they might change their vendors and suppliers. They also are going to change their investment into how they go to market. And especially if the acquisitions are happening with some of the clients that we're seeing going through a lot of acquisition, which means there's a lot of VC funds that are coming into the market. So there are packaging companies getting acquired, which means that competition is on the rise, as well as these companies that are going through this succession planning. There's also a lot of changes within the organization. It's forcing them to go find new suppliers and marketers. So all of that means people think that, hey, we have all these old tactics of interruption-based marketing, cold calls, going to trade shows. Let's just try to do this with some new technology. Maybe we'll just use a mobile optimized website, and we'll text more people, and we'll just blast a bunch of emails. We'll purchase a list on Zoom Info, blast emails to everybody instead of actually calling them. Or maybe we'll figure out a way to reach these people with some new tool, post on social media. Those tactics in and itself isn't going to be effective just because you're changing the medium of reach. So the strategy has to evolve, and you have to also start to align your entire strategy along the purchase journey of the customers. So why go inbound? What we're saying is the outbound interruption-based, the traditional medium of reaching customers, they're not necessarily bad, but they're not as efficient as the new method, which is more of an inbound strategy that's driven by figuring out a way to get customers to come to you, our in-market buyers proactively thinking about doing business with you, to raise their hands and say, hey, I'm interested in doing business with you. I need your help. I need your expertise to solve this business challenge, which could be, I need to figure out how do I efficiently package my products or goods? How do I be more green? What can I do about child safety? There's all kinds of questions around packaging that they might want. How can I be getting more attention on the shelf of the retail stores? All of those questions that they have, they want to be coming to you as the industry expert in packaging to ask you for your help. So why go inbound? The first and foremost, I think what you need to understand is the entire buyer journey is no longer linear, right? Going and meeting somebody at the trade show, then asking for a quote, and then making a purchase. That way of conversation starting isn't happening anymore. People are all over the web, right? They're consuming information on Google, organically reading, right? Querying different questions, finding a blog, reading that blog. Then they might end up seeing an ad on some paid ads. They might end up on your email newsletter, start reading some of your email. They might actually join a webinar. They might be continuing to consume videos off of your site. There's all sorts of things that they can do. And some people make purchase decisions just by researching on Google, reading some blogs and reading some reviews, and then contacting companies. Some people might spend hours on YouTube video trying to figure out, hey, what kind of solutions are best suited for them. And then by the time they're actually ready to inquire and starting a sales conversation, there's probably tens, if not multiple tens of touch points that they're having with different organizations and companies and channels to collect all the information that they need to make a purchase decision. Because this sales process isn't linear and this purchase journey is so convoluted, you have to align your strategy with more of an inbound approach than the traditional medium. Secondly, you need a predictable. if you're in manufacturing space, you are all about process automation and systematizing things and controlling quality outputs and making sure that the production is in following a certain schedule. You understand the importance of all of those things. You also need to have that same vigil and consideration when it comes to sales and revenue generation and customer acquisition, right? And that is where inbound really is effective, because you have a systematic and methodical way to consistently drive inquiries that are coming like clockwork. So you can be having very qualified conversation with prospective customers and then turn those into sales opportunities and leads, and which is why inbound is super efficient and better. And last but not least is essentially the ability to have visibility into everything that's happening. If you ask before you go to a trade show, how many business cards do you expect to collect, or how many leads do you expect to collect? There is no guarantee. But if you have a systematic way to drive consistent flow of traffic and you know exactly what percentage of those traffic or visitors turns into a lead, and what percentages are qualified sales opportunities, and what do you expect to close each month, then you have predictability and you have a lot more visibility, and you just have to figure out which of those levers do I have to pull to hit my revenue targets. So there's a lot of that we're going to be uncovering in the coming minutes, but essentially, just to say the least, these are some of the higher level benefit of actually leveraging an inbound methodology and approach as opposed to some of the traditional mediums. Oh, Taylor, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Some technical difficulties. We appreciate that, Samuel. I think you did a great job of kind of painting the picture of where we're at today. And if you're watching this, and obviously we're sitting here in 2022, right? I think everybody understands that we know we need to do something in digital, but most of the manufacturing, packaging clients that we talk to don't know where to start. How do we actually implement this? What channels are right for me? How much should I invest? All these kind of questions. And so what we've created is really a simple formula that we follow and we implement for all of our clients in order for them to transition into this digital age. And as Samuel mentioned, it's not that these relationship-driven sales processes are going to go away. At the end of the day, we're business to business. We do provide something that is typically requires a human interaction. All we need to do is create more opportunity for those, human interactions to happen. If we look at our job as marketers, it's really how do we answer this question? How do we get everyone in our market to know who we are and understand what we offer? And that's really the first step, right? If we talk with 100 manufacturing companies, 100 packaging companies, 99 of them tell us that we have the superior process, we have the superior product. If we just had more people to know about us, right? If we just had a little bit more awareness, we close 90% of our deals, or we close 50% of our deals, whatever those statistics are, everyone believes they have a competitive advantage. Right? We wouldn't be in business if we didn't think that we had some competitive advantage in our market, in our niche. The question remains, how do we create those opportunities? You look at this formula here, and the first thing we need to do is have the right tools and technologies in place in order to execute this at scale. We're going to talk about a lot of different marketing strategies, all in the same vein in terms of the idea. But if we don't have the ability to track and measure, we don't have the ability to test, we don't have that visibility that Samuel just mentioned in terms of what's working, what's not working, what sort of ROI are we getting, it's going to be hard to invest or to double down or to scale up if we don't really know what's working. So the first thing we do for all of our clients is implement tools and technologies that allow us to do our job faster, allow us to get full visibility into the quality of leads, the value of these leads that are being generated, sales velocity, meaning how fast are we closing these deals, average deal size in terms of revenue. And ultimately, again, it comes back to ROI, right? How much did we invest into our marketing? What did that net us in terms of opportunities? And what did that bring us in terms of new revenue? And then ultimately, you can start diving into that deeper and looking at profitability as well. So that's the first step. The next thing we have to look at is, okay, how do we get these people to our website, right? If our website is our new front door, as the saying goes, we have to look at, okay, how do we get more people to our website? How do we educate them? How do we build that awareness? There's really only two scenarios, right? If we look at our total addressable market, there's people that are actively in a buying cycle, actively online searching, right? So we're a, custom, packaging company. An example would be maybe somebody sitting down their computer and searching for custom packaging company Chicago, custom packaging company near me, something along those lines. Could be more specific, and we'll get into different search terms here in a second, but that's the idea, right? We can capture that existing demand, people that know what they're looking for. We can capture that demand by making sure that we are visible for people searching, right? Whether they're searching online, whether they're searching in direct. That's how we can capture that existing demand. The flip side of that coin is, well, there's a segment of our addressable market that is not actively searching. They already have a vendor. Maybe they are not necessarily aware that your solution exists. Maybe you've created some sort of a new technology or new process that saves time, creates a better quality product, whatever that is. So we need to focus on creating awareness. Awareness and education are really synonymous in our world, right? In order to create awareness, we need to educate our market on sometimes both a problem and a solution in order to effectively bring them over into a place where they are actively in a buying cycle. We need to show them something that's different than what they're currently doing and introduce a new solution. Again, historically, what we've seen packaging companies do to create awareness is, well, we go to trade shows, right? It's sometimes hard to show off your capabilities at a trade show. You could bring some of your packaging. You can't obviously bring any of your equipment or machinery. And sometimes what you're doing is very custom and high end. And so it's unique, right? And everything you're talking about is theoretical. So how do we create some awareness and demand? In the digital age, we're going to talk about how we focus on education, creating educational content and distributing that content to the right people at the right time in order to educate them on your company and your offering. And then the second half of that is, okay, we're getting people to our website. Maybe we're converting them into leads. How do we actually manage and nurture those contacts and customers? Do we have a CRM in place? Do we have marketing automation? Do we have those tools and technologies that allow us to segment and nurture those leads? And then the final point there is just really winning on brand. We talk about positioning our clients as a thought leader in the industry. What we want is we want your customers to immediately think of you when they have a problem that you can solve, right? When they have a new product that they want to launch, or they have a new packaging run that they want to actually bring to market, we want them to think of you first, right? We want you to be the go-to leader in the industry. And that comes from executing at a high level across all these marketing initiatives that we'll talk about, and consistently positioning your company as a thought leader, as an industry expert. And by doing that continuously over time, you're the one educating the market. You're the one pushing on the forefront of what's happening in the packaging space. You will win on brand time and time again. And so what that looks like in practice is something like this, right? It's a constant push and pull of acquiring new visitors and leads through your website, through that content creation, promotion, capturing that existing demand, as well as creating new demand, and then managing and nurturing those contacts and customers. And Samuel mentioned this earlier, but historically, our biggest, as manufacturers, as packaging companies, our biggest asset has been our client database, right? Our clients' referrals, word of mouth. We've had long-standing relationships. We've been working with companies for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We don't necessarily think that is going to go away, but what we know is that means that the value of these new leads, these new customers, is tenfold, right? Because if our number one driver of new business is word of mouth, that means that for every new customer that we bring on, it's really like bringing on 3 or 4 new customers, because they're going to tell more people. Our ability to manage and nurture those contacts and supplement and augment what we're doing manually with some technology and some automation is really what takes our clients to the next level. So what we want to do, how do we actually implement this? How do we get people to our website? How do we, again, get everyone to understand who we are and what we offer? The old static one-page brochure type website is going by the wayside. The new model is essentially turn your website into the Wikipedia for your industry. And we don't mean, just let anybody contribute content to your website. What we mean is we want to be very comprehensive and complete with the topics that we cover related to our audience, right? There shouldn't be a topic related to your product, your sales process, your customers that you don't broach on your website. We want to go much deeper into these topics. Essentially, what questions are your customers asking online? Let's answer them. Let's address them. The more we do that, they're going to get this information. We have so much information at the tip of our fingers. We go to Google, we type things in, we go to YouTube, we can learn how to do pretty much anything. Why aren't we the ones educating our market, right? If we have the knowledge, we should educate them, which again, mentally puts us in a position of power because they believe that we are the experts, because we are. We have the expertise. Let's put it out there online so that we can reap what we sow in terms of attracting the right people to our website. So in order to do that, in order to transform your website, in order to create this level of content, there's a few things that we need to really understand. Some of the basics are, one, who are your customers, right? If you're going to market to somebody, you really need to understand who they are, what motivates them, what are their day-to-day job responsibilities. And we're not talking about the broad, well, we work with CPG companies that are $100 million plus. Who is that individual that you're working with? Why would they, what motivating factors would they have to actually make a change in vendors? We need to understand where they consume that information. We know, obviously, we talk about Google, right? But are there other industry publications? How do they find answers to their questions? Where do they hang out essentially online? What social media platforms are they on? And again, back to what I was referring to earlier, is what motivates them. They're currently doing something. A lot of our clients are challenging the status quo, right? Yes, you're going against other vendors, but a lot of times people don't switch packaging vendors unless something, catastrophic happens. They're just really not happy with their current vendor. Maybe they're outgrowing them, but something like that certainly is a trigger. But we need to really dive deeper into how does that impact their personal life? How does that impact their professional life? And one of the things that you can do, an exercise that you can complete, is creating a buyer persona as well as an ideal customer profile. So ideal customer profile is more around the customer, the company itself, your client that you're working with, the industry that they're in, the geography, maybe the title of a person that you're working with in particular. And the buyer persona goes into some of those other details that we talked about, their background, what motivates them, what challenges they're facing. How does your solution impact both their personal and professional life? We need to really understand that, because if all we talk about in our marketing messaging and on our website is we're just talking about our own features and benefits, we're not really speaking to our customers. We need to understand who our customers are and why they would work with us. A great place to start is with your actual customers. A lot of times we work with companies that have never really had these conversations with their customers, with their prospects, deals they won, deals they lost. Just have open, candid conversations around, why do you work with us? Why do you like working with us? They may give you different answers than what you think. A lot of times as packaging companies, manufacturers, we say things like, we have the highest quality, our turnaround time, our ability to do variable data, printing and all these sorts of things. Maybe that's not it. All packaging companies we work with say our customer service is the best, right? Not everyone's customer service can be the best. So we need to really ask our customers truly, why do they like working with us? And if we can get some sort of a consensus there from our best customers, maybe customers that left us, why they left us, we can start to really understand who these individuals are, which is going to really equip us to market to them better in the future. The next thing we need to understand is, what does that path to purchase look like? How do these customers make their decisions? We know that at the end of the day, when they're in that decision-making phase and we're talking to us and one other company, we typically know what that looks like. But what about earlier on in the process? What does that awareness phase look like, both problem aware as well as solution aware? How do they become aware of your solution? The consideration phase, when we're looking at alternatives, when maybe we're looking at doing this in-house versus outsource, maybe we're looking at one material versus the other, maybe we're looking at one process versus the other. How do they weigh those options? What's important to them? And then ultimately down to the decision-making stage, what are those, deciding factors that they're going to look at? Reviews, case studies, those type of things, proximity, maybe they're considering cost, shipping cost, whatever that may be. We need to really understand what those factors are. And then into delight. This is where I talked about our best customers, and maybe I don't want to say worst customers, but customers maybe that have left us. Why is that, right? We need to understand why people stay with us. It's, not to say it's easy to win a deal and bring on a new customer, but that's just the beginning of it. The real work starts when we actually have to service those clients and keep them for 4, 5, 10 years. We really need to understand what that looks like, again, so that we can focus our marketing efforts, not just on attracting them, but also on retaining them. When we break down the buyer's journey and that path to purchase, what we want to look at is how can we address that with our marketing, right? When we talk about the content we're creating on our website, we need to look at it in the sense of how people are searching online. So the way that we look at it is you can break it down into 3 main categories: problem or opportunity search terms, solution terms, and then comparison terms. So problem or opportunity search terms would be, they're searching for a problem, right? They're looking at troubleshooting. They're looking at how does this work? How does that work? What is this? Defining processes, just really trying to understand. They're researching, right? And so we need to create content that's what we call top of the funnel around research related search terms, information-based search terms. Then we look at solution terms, right? Well, now that we've identified a problem, how do we start to look for a solution? What type of search terms are related to your products and your offerings that fit that category? When we get into other opportunities, it's going to be comparison terms, right? People look at comparison or versus, pros and cons, reviews, alternatives, anything related to your products. You can start to define what those search terms might look like. And then you can address that with content that's related and relevant to those search terms. And we'll show you some examples here if you're maybe not following along. So we look at it again as top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. So when we look at packaging related search terms, those research related informational search terms, we look at keywords like, how can I make my packaging unique, right? Influencer box packaging ideas. What is lenticular printing? Cannabis packaging safety guidelines. So again, put yourself in the mind of your buyer persona. They're researching. They're just trying to define exactly what they are looking for. They're not all the way at the bottom of the funnel. They're not searching for best flexographic printing company, food and beverage industry quite yet, because they're still trying to understand the types of options that they have. So they're researching at the top of the funnel. As they start to understand those options, they're going to go into the middle of the funnel where they're going to start researching some of those comparison type search terms. Like maybe they're deciding between lenticular and hologram printing. They want to understand the differences and how it's going to ultimately impact their product. That maybe they're looking at the types of labels for beverage bottles, right? What are the considerations you have to keep in mind? So you could create a blog article around, it depends on the type of beverage bottle, it depends on where it's going to be stored, it depends on what's inside of it, right? If it's going to be refrigerated or not. There's so many different considerations that you have to make. So you need to write a blog or create content that addresses those different considerations and educates your prospect as they're doing that research. People might be searching for, again, contract packaging versus in-house. You can just explain the pros and cons, the benefits, advantages. These are conversations that I'm sure your salespeople have every day. Address those topics, put that into written, visual, that could be audio. There's a lot of different types of content you can create, but you need to address those topics. Then you get to the bottom of the funnel, right? And this is somebody who knows exactly what they're looking for. This is typically where we talk about capturing that existing demand. And we'll show you some examples, but these are people that have done the research and now they're going online to find the best option, right? So they're looking for Chicago influencer packaging companies. They're looking for luxury folding carton manufacturers. They're looking for, again, as I mentioned, a best flexographic printing company, food and beverage industry. That's a very specific search. There may only be 5 people each month that search for that. But if that's the solution you offer, flexographic printing company, and you have experience in food and beverage, when they find your website and when they find that page that addresses those topics, that's so relevant and so on point that you're going to be at the top of the list, right? So we need to make sure that we are present in each one of these stages as our buyers are researching online, as they're just at the top of the funnel, as they're at the middle of the funnel, and as they're at the bottom of the funnel. We want to be the ones that show up every single time. So what that looks like, if you guys can see this here, right? So if you go to Google, you search for something like this, influencer marketing kit ideas, top of the funnel research related search. We have a few different options for us to show up. In this particular search, what's called the SERP, or the search engine results page, ads at the top. Most searches, you're going to see ads at the top, right? That's how Google makes their money. This is great option for you if you're just getting started and you're looking to gain some insight into what your customers are searching. You can start with some Google ads, and you can actually show up. You could set up a campaign. You could show up tomorrow for the search terms that you prefer. Underneath that is what's called the organic results. This is where that content strategy of creating content on your website is going to help you show up. And actually what's being shown here is what's called a rich snippet, right? And so this particular search, influencer marketing kit ideas, you can see this company created a how-to guide about impressive influencer media kits. And they have a bullet point and a list of everything that needs to be included, examples of nice boxes, good influencer marketing kits. And this is a great example of content that you can create that can set yourself apart from the competition very early on in the buyer's journey, right? Somebody's just beginning to research. We can show up, we can give them ideas, we can ultimately probably capture them as a lead before any of our competitors even get in the mix. Other searches that you might see, more middle of the funnel, maybe somebody looking for types of labels for beverage bottles. Again, similar results here. We actually see some what's called shopping ads or product listing ads. If you sell anything through e-commerce on your website, you can actually upload your product feed into Google and show ads like this, where you can see the image and price, which could be great for you if you have any sort of e-commerce transaction on your website. Most of our clients in the packaging space are strictly B2B type lead gen companies. So they're going to probably play in those other two spaces of those Google ads that you see there, as well as the organic results. And a similar result that you see here from middle of the funnel, research related search, people are creating a list, right? So 5 best types of labels for glass bottles and jars. Again, talking about the different material, talking about the pros, cons, advantages. This is all knowledge that your team has, but it's probably not on your website, right? Which means that you're not attracting people that are researching these topics to your website, and your competitors are at the end of the day. Another search would be more bottom of the funnel. Maybe I've decided, okay, I know what I need. I don't just need a packaging company. Maybe that's at the beginning, people are searching packaging company. I've defined what I need through this research, and now I'm looking for a luxury folding carton manufacturer, very specific project that I have, and I need to find somebody. So you can see, again, for bottom of the funnel searches, you're going to see actually more ads because this is a more valuable search based on the intent. So now I see 4 companies here that are paying for ads. They're willing to pay just for 1 click to get someone to their website. Underneath that, I see a couple of organic results. And this is what we call above the scroll. So if I'm on my computer or on a mobile device, this is all I'm going to see until I start scrolling. That's why there's so much value in showing up at the top, right? Because I'm sure all of you watching this have done a Google search yourself, and probably none of you have ever gone to page 3 of Google search results. If you don't find what you're looking for in the top 3, 4, 5 results, most of the time you go back and you search something else because you assume you weren't clear enough with your search. So there's so much emphasis needs to be put on. If we're focusing on organic or we're focusing on paid, we need to be at the top of those search results in order to capture that demand. But this is such a specific search that if we show up in the top 3 positions organically, we will get customers, right? Someone searching for luxury folding carton manufacturer, that's not a fluke. It's not bad traffic. That's somebody who has a very specific need. And if we can solve that need, we should at least be able to get to a quote from a search. Once we define our strategy to get the people to the website, And we're confident that we're generating quality visitors, quality traffic, because we're putting out the right content that's attracting the right visitors. How do we actually convert those visitors? Just as we have to align our content with the way our clients are searching, we have to align our conversion methods with what our customers are looking for. And just as Samuel mentioned earlier, the world has changed, right? There's not just one method of communication anymore. And even though we have defined our buyer personas, everyone's individually is different in terms of what they prefer. Sometimes people are earlier on in the process and they just want a quick, answer to their question. So something like a live chat or a support chat might be a great way to communicate with them, because they know what happens if they fill out a request a quote form, right? They're not ready for a quote. They just have a quick question. Can you handle this? Is my project too small for you? All these type of questions. Do you have this material? Do you ship to Canada? Whatever the questions are, very quick questions that if we don't have that option as a chat, we might lose those people, right? They might just go somewhere else to somebody who does have a chat. Other options, do we have reports, technical guides? We talked about example of somebody searching for influencer box kit or something along those lines. Do we have something they can download that's a downloadable asset that helps them develop? We have clients that do, like I mentioned, labels, right? And so we create label templates for them to download. There's infinite options for you to create valuable assets that can be used in exchange for email addresses or contact information, and more of those top of the funnel and middle of the funnel options. You get into the bottom of the funnel, that's where you do need to have some sort of a request a quote or talk to a packaging specialist, something along those lines. Align again the messaging with what we know our customers are looking for, and make sure that we have options for each stage of the buyer's journey in order to convert them at the right time. And an important piece is make sure that we follow up with them in the correct manner. If somebody just downloaded a guide or an ebook, it's not the same form submission as somebody who requested a quote, right? So we need to treat them accordingly. This is an example of putting that all together, right? If we create a blog post about a particular topic that's going to drive research related traffic, then the offer on that page needs to be in line with the visitor and why they're there. So we've created, in this example, this company has an ebook or a guide within that blog post that as someone's reading, if they want to get more information, they can download that. Here's a couple of examples of ebooks and guides that packaging companies are creating around complete guide to labeling your products, right? Or top 5 label design mistakes that cost you money. That might be aligned with that particular buyer persona of, I'm worried about my label on my bottle is directly impacting my sales. So what mistakes are we potentially making that could be impacting our sales? So these are great examples of conversion assets that can be used. Other things that can be done in order to stay in front of our customers, right? If we're creating top of the funnel, middle of the funnel topics, that means that our customers may not be making a purchase sometimes for 5, 6, 7 months down the road, sometimes even longer. So if they're just at the beginning of their research and they go to your website, how do we stay in front of them over those next few months? How do we stay top of mind? Retargeting or remarketing, if you guys have heard of, is a very cost-effective way to accomplish that. So we can essentially cookie people or pixel them. And once they come to our website, we've done the hard work of getting them to our website. Now we just cookie them. So as they go about their lives, as they're on other websites, publications, if they go to social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're checking the weather, they're checking their favorite sports team on ESPN, whatever websites they're on, we can stay in front of them and offer something of value to them to get them to come back to our website. So these are examples of retargeting or display ads that we can use and leverage in order to get those visitors back to our website and continue to add value to them throughout that sales process. Other ways that we want to look at promoting our content, right? If we're focusing on, we talked about capturing existing demand. If we're focusing on creating awareness and demand, we can't always rely on things like search because our customers might not be searching. They might be they might think they're happy with their vendor. They might not be aware of a problem that they have. So we can use those personas that we've created and use those ICPs that we've created to set targeting parameters Google, on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, wherever our customers, again, consume information, wherever they hang out, we can get very targeted with our targeting and the parameters that we've set. So only our customers will see this, right? So imagine this is a digital billboard that only our potential customers or only our addressable market drives by every day. And rather than just driving by, they can actually see this, they can click on it, they can get instant feedback, instant gratification from, wow, I'm actually interested in this topic. Let me see what they have to offer. They can download this, they can go to a landing page, they can watch a webinar, whatever that content that we're spending time, money, and effort creating, we need to put a little bit of effort behind actually promoting it so that we can get it in front of the right people at the right time. Other examples and topics that we can use for education. We're sitting in it right now, right? A webinar. Some topics, depending on the complexity, depending on your audience, are better explained in a webinar format, right? So we need to start, as we start developing our content strategy, we understand what those topics are. We need to start thinking, what is going to be the most efficient way for me to convey this message? Is it a video? Is it an infographic? Is it interactive, panel discussion? Is it something that's physical and tangible that we need some other way to, get it in front of them? Need to really understand the best way to articulate our message. A lot of times webinars are great ways to do that. All right. Hopefully you guys are still with us. There's only a few more things that we need to cover here. But to me, this is probably the most important piece. We're spending money. We're spending a lot of effort on our marketing. We need to understand how we're going to measure this. What does success look like? For us, it's pretty simple. Our clients are very concerned about revenue, right? At the end of the day, we wouldn't invest into marketing if we weren't trying to generate new business. We don't just spend money for the sake of spending money. So we need to be able to understand how this is impacting our revenue. In order to do that, we have to work backwards from how do we get customers? First, we need people to come to our website. We need the right people. So we're measuring website visitors, we're measuring our keyword rankings, we're looking at the intent and the value of those visitors based on the topics we're discussing. We're looking at the search terms that they're searching in order to find us. We're looking at the referral traffic of what websites they're coming from. We're really focused on driving quality visitors to the website, and we have metrics surrounding how to measure the traffic and the quality of that traffic. From there, the next step is how do we get them to reach out to us, right? How are we generating leads? What is the quality and the quantity of the leads that are being submitted? What are the types of leads and what is the source of those leads? An interim step there is how many of those leads are actually turning into opportunities or proposals. We should have the ability to track that if we have the right tools and technologies in place. And then ultimately it's sales, it's revenues, right? How many opportunities do we have that are sourced from our marketing initiatives? How many deals have we won? Again, what is the average deal cycle, that deal size? And things that we need to look at is basically that cost of customer acquisition, right? What a lot of companies don't look at or don't measure is that maybe we had a salesperson that's partly salaried, partly commissioned, that's worked this deal, worked this opportunity for 2 years, right? If it was an outbound opportunity, how much does that cost? If we have an inbound lead that closes in 30 or 60 days, what's the difference there? How many deals can our salespeople handle if they're 100% inbound leads and they're inside sales reps versus traveling around the world and meeting with people in person? I think a lot of companies were forced to make that shift with COVID and with the pandemic, but we've had clients that have made that transition 8 years ago, right? Where they went from a 8-person outside sales rep organization to a 2-person inside sales rep organization. And they're doing 10x the actual sales and revenue with, again, a quarter of the people, quarter of the staff. So how we measure that is on those 3 key metrics. And what that really looks like is something like this, right? So I'm going to walk through these numbers for you quickly here, just to understand. Again, every website has an equation that looks like this, no matter what you're selling. I understand that in this scenario, we're B2B, we're generating leads. It's the same thing if we were, selling hats and shoes and, clothes online. We have an equation to our website. If we get a certain volume of people to our website, a certain percentage of them will convert into leads, a certain percentage of those leads will convert into opportunities, and a certain percentage of those opportunities we will either win or lose. So if we look at a number around, let's say 5,000 searches a month, 5,000 visitors a month rather. To me, this is a very attainable number for clients in the packaging space, getting anywhere from 3,000 to 30,000 or 50,000 visitors a month to their website. 5,000 is a very attainable number for most of you on this call. It depends on your industry, but 5,000 visitors to the website. Industry statistics show that in this space, we should see anywhere from a 2% to even a 10% conversion rate, meaning 2% of the people on the website are converting, or 10% of the people on the website are converting into a lead, which we talked about could be a form submission, a phone call, ebook download, anything of the sort that generates a contact from us. We also understand not all of those leads are going to turn into opportunities. So for the purpose of this display here, we're going to look at, let's say only 1 out of every 5 of those leads are actually qualified, meaning 20% of those leads are qualified. Well, with this 5,000 number, that means we're going to get about 20 new qualified leads a month. To many of you on this call, if this is your first effort into digital marketing, 20 new qualified leads a month may seem like a outrageous amount, right? It may seem insane to say every business day of the month, we're going to generate a new quality lead. But again, very attainable. And the metrics here support that. So again, let's aim on the low side and say, let's say out of those 1 out of every 5 qualified leads, we only close 1 out of every 5 of those, right? Majority of our clients, again, when they come to us, they say we close 80%, we close 60%. Sometimes we don't have the statistics to back that up. The tools that we implement will get very clear insight into what these metrics are. So let's aim on the low side and say, hey, 20% of those leads are going to close into new business. 20% of 20 qualified leads is about 4 new customers each month, right? Now, this is where you have to look at what is our average deal size. This could be measured in a few different ways. Some people just look at their gross profit margin on each customer. Some people look at that initial sale. Some people look at the annual value, right? If we have customers, maybe that initial sale is only $5,000 order, but they order 12 times a month or 12 times a year or 20 times a year, whatever that is. Some people look at the lifetime value of a customer, right? Hey, if my average customer stays with me for 5 years and they spend $100,000 a year, then it's that value of that customer is $500,000. So how much am I willing to spend in order to generate $500,000 over the next 5 years? So this is something we can go through on an individual level if you guys have questions, but you should have some insight in your mind of what is your average deal worth. For this example, we put $60,000 in terms of that average revenue, probably an annual figure there for a new packaging client. And let's assume between personnel and things that you're actually investing into your marketing, let's say you're spending $10,000 a month in your actual marketing in terms of your marketing initiatives. That would mean that your average cost per lead is about $100, right? So for every $100 you spend, you generate a qualified lead. Again, Samuel mentioned the true cost of a trade show, the cost of outbound marketing. I guarantee you that the cost per qualified opportunity is much higher than that through your current efforts. The other number that's important is that cost per acquisition, right? So in this scenario, every $2,500 this particular company would spend, they're generating $240,000 in revenue. That's essentially a 10x on their, really more than that in terms of their return on investment, right? So you spend $2,500, you get $250,000 in new revenue. That's a pretty good return on investment. And just to show you that we're not making these numbers up, we're not fabricating this in terms of what could happen here. These are 3 examples of real customers, real data. I mentioned we implement tools and technologies that allow you to gain the insight into where these customers are coming from. And you can see this is a screenshot of about, I believe this one is about a 10-month time frame. 45,000 visitors to their website, which is up almost 30% from the year before. Over 2,600 new contacts generated. We talked about that conversion rate, 2%. I gave you as an example. This is about 6%, 5.8% conversion rate from visitor to contact. So even much higher than what we explained. That's up 63% since we started working with them. And then from there, out of those visitors, they got 43 new customers. Again, this is a very high-end custom packaging company. So these customers are worth $60,000, $100,000, $200,000 annually to them. So These numbers are going to be different for every customer, depending on the industry that you're in or the types of clients you're looking for. As you can see here, this customer is a much higher volume of visitors, about double the amount of visitors. And this is in a 12-month period, almost 100,000 visitors to their website, 100,000 quality visitors, interested prospects to their website, which generated over 1,200 new contacts and 320 new customers. Again, this is just tracking inbound marketing. These are leads, contacts, customers that are directly from their inbound marketing efforts. This is not related to their sales efforts. This is not related to any outbound sourced leads. Same thing here with this global custom packaging company. High volume of visitors to their website. We're doing a great job. They're doing a great job of creating and contributing content to their website and their web properties around the topics that their customers are looking for. And they're generating over 160,000 visitors annually to their website, which is bringing them nearly 2,000 visitors, or contacts rather, and ultimately 145 new customers. So this is a question that you'd have to ask you. What would it cost you? What would you have to do at with your current sales initiative, marketing initiatives to generate 145 new customers? Is that even attainable for you based on what you're doing? For a lot of our clients, you look at it and you say, we would have to hire 30 new sales reps or 50 new sales reps. And is that even something that's scalable? Do we even have a process in place, as Samuel mentioned, to predictably get to that? What we found is inbound marketing is the best way to do that, because we're just capturing what we know is out there. We're capturing that existing demand, and we're focusing on education at scale rather than manually having to call and try to educate each one of these potential customers. So I know we're running short on time here. We're coming to the end. If you stayed with us the whole time, I appreciate it. If you need help implementing any of these, if you have questions, even if you just want to chat, you want to show us what you've been focusing on in terms of your content and get some feedback, we're happy to do so. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our job as marketers is to help educate our potential customers and find the right fit. So we're happy to do that free of cost. You can set up a call with us. You can download this free checklist to really see where you're at, how your business stacks up to your competitors, to your peers. Are you ready for growth? Follow this checklist. You can download this checklist at oneims.com/MFG growth check. You can also schedule a meeting with myself personally to talk about this. You'll have access to my calendar, oneims.com/Taylor. And if you have any questions, you want to get any access to any of these links, you want to see any of these statistics, you can email me directly at trowe, TROWE, at oneims.com and ask for any of these links. Ask for the checklist if you can't remember the actual link, but we're happy to help. We're here to help. All right. I know we only have a couple of minutes left. We're happy to stay on and go over if you guys have time, but I want to answer any questions that we have. John is our moderator here. He might have some questions for us. I don't know if he sent those over to Sam.
Yeah. How long something like this would take was one of the questions.
Sure. It depends on what we say is this, right? We talk about turning our website into a Wikipedia for our industry. It's a never ending, right? It's a never ending pursuit because our landscape, our industry is constantly evolving. I'm sure you're consistently investing into your tools and technologies, probably buying new equipment and machinery. So things are always changing. We always need to continue to educate our prospects, but it's going to take some time, right? If we're talking about organically, we need to create the content. We need to get the content on our website. Google needs to start indexing the content, understand what's working, then start changing the rankings to, show our website higher. Then the people have to find the website, then they have to convert. For us to, from start to finish, to start creating 5, 10, 15, 20 blogs, pages on the website, and then ultimately until you get leads, it could be 6, 8, 12-month pursuit to start seeing some of those results, which is why we measure those KPIs along the way. So I think you should start seeing results very quickly if you're measuring the right metrics. But ultimately, this is something that is a shift in the way that you operate as a business, and it's not a one-time quick fix solution.
And the other question is, what kind of talent should we look to hire?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most packaging companies, manufacturing companies have very technical team members, right? We have very technical and capable packaging experts. A lot of times we don't have content creators. Everything we're talking about is creating content, written content, video content, visual content, and have to have a clear understanding of the digital landscape. So social media, Google, paid media. So those are all different skill sets there. So we're talking about, probably 4 or 5 different skill sets. What our clients do typically is obviously bring us on to fill a couple of roles. One as typically that CMO, fractional CMO, if you will, to help guide the overall strategy. And then as well as technical resources to implement, make changes to the website, design, develop, handle search engine optimization, those type of things. Where it may make sense to hire people in-house is maybe a content writer, actually. Clients accomplish this in a number of different ways. Sometimes it's summer engineering interns or something along those lines that are just trying to get to know the industry. One great way for you to get to know the industry is to write about it. Right? I would say content writer is probably the most common internal hire, or maybe like a marketing coordinator to help be the liaison. But a great option certainly to keep costs down and to shorten that time to see results is to hire a company like OneIMS to help execute.
Perfect. And then the one last question I would just say we can wrap it up on is how much should we invest?
Yeah, I think that's going to be different for each customer. And if you're asking yourself that question again, I'd be happy to talk about that personal basis. If you book a time here, oneims.com/Taylor, it's ultimately going to come down to what you're trying to accomplish. We showed that ROI calculator and projection. It's not something that you can say, well, I'll invest $10 and then once I make 100, then I'll invest 100. Like there's a minimum kind of amount that you have to invest, because there's a lot of work to be done just at the foundation level. So it's going to depend on your starting point. It's going to depend where you're at today. It's going to depend on where you're trying to be. It's going to depend on who your customers are. But ultimately, what we do with all of our clients before we even get started is make sure that this is feasible in terms of profitability, right? Like we want to make sure that we can generate a profit, meaning whatever you're investing is too much if it doesn't generate a profit for you. So we show that example of, hey, let's spend $10,000 and we get $250,000 in return. Then yeah, that'd be great. And you look at that and you break it down in the cost per acquisition. We showed that example of $2,500. If you're willing to spend $2,500 to make 40,000 or make 100,000 or whatever that number is, then that's the way you need to look at it. So the best way to do it is how much can we spend to acquire a customer and still make a profit, right? What is that break even point? And then how many new customers are we looking to bring on? So if we're looking to bring on 10 new customers and we're willing to spend $10,000 a piece, then maybe your marketing budget is $100,000. But you have to make sure that you're working backwards from that 100,000 to make sure you can hit those metrics. And that's something we can help with.
Yeah, I think with that, it's a wrap. Obviously, we're over time today, but I appreciate you joining us today. We're confident you walked away with some actionable insights you can implement in your organization right away. Like Taylor mentioned, there are a couple of resources that we made available. Please take advantage of setting up this one-on-one session with Taylor to just talk through some strategy. Or if you would like to just even see, are you growth ready in terms of figuring out where you are as an organization and what you might need to start looking into. So I would recommend that you also take a look at this checklist, and it will help you solidify some plans in terms of what you may need to work on immediately as well.